Hey, this is Ryan Jones with Serverless Guru. In this video, we're going to be covering Serverless Finch. Serverless Finch is a plugin that allows you to deploy static sites to AWS. So if you go to github.com, Fernando-MC Serverless Finch, Fernando MC is the creator of this plugin, and you look at the Serverless Finch README, we can see that to actually get this running, there's only a couple of steps. First, we need to install it, and then we need to add it to our serverless.yaml file. And then we need to create a couple of folders, which we can run these commands here, and that'll put that together. And then all we have to do is run serverless client deploy, and we'll have a deployed website that's live and that we can actually start making requests to. So this is probably one of the biggest plugins for showing people the power of serverless, because you're able to actually get a site up and running and live with HTTPS, in a couple of minutes. So let's go ahead and jump in. What we're going to do is switch back over to the terminal, and we're going to run SLS create --template aws-node.js, and then we're going to give it a path of serverless Finch. And our boilerplate's been created, and then we're going to cd into serverless Finch, and we're going to open an atom. Cool. So now that we have this going, we've got our normal files, we've got our handler.js, which is the default Lambda function code that comes with it. We're going to do like we normally do, and we're going to delete out all this extra stuff. If you do want to learn more about these different parameters and what we're actually deleting right now, then definitely check out the serverless introduction course, where we go through everything from creating your first serverless project to actually structuring serverless files and adding resources and all that great stuff. So now that we're here, we're done with that, with the actual creation of our project. Now we're going to have to do npm init, and this will allow us to add the serverless Finch package. So now we're going to run the installation command. So it looks like it's throwing issues strictly because our, oh, I see. Okay, so yeah, so basically because our serverless, because I called this project serverless Finch, it's causing issues. So let me actually change this. So I'm going to change it to serverless Finch plugin. Okay, and then cd into serverless Finch plugin. Alright, and now let's go ahead and close this out and open it again in Atom. Okay, we have our normal files there. Let's just package.json. So it looks like this has the serverless Finch old thing on it, so let's change this to plugin. There we go. And now let's go ahead and run that command. Sweet, looks to be working. Alright, so with this stuff installed, serverless Finch in our dependencies, we are good to start adding the second step, which is actually usage. So let's go ahead and add this one at a time. First we'll add plugins. Okay, then we're going to add our custom block, and this is where we specify the actual plugin information. So client is specific to serverless Finch. So anything underneath client is the serverless Finch configuration. So we're going to give it a bucket name. So let's go ahead and call this self. So this is a reference to our service name, which is this. So let's actually add this serverless plugin. And we'll say self-service, and then we will call it static site. Awesome. So now that we have this there, it looks like that is the only configuration that is required to actually get going. You can also do things down here. It has more instructions like setting a distribution folder. So it requires you to use the client distribution folder. So all of our files will be inside of this folder, but if you did want to specify a different path, you could use the distribution folder. So we can actually add this and we can look at it. Let's do distribution folder and let's say client. So I'm just going to use the default, but that's just so that you can see kind of what's happening. So we'll add index document as well. So this is specifying where it's going to actually pull our index document. And then we have an error document. Let me see, error.html. So index document is kind of your starting point. So when people come to your website, because it's a static website, a lot of single page applications, things that you build with like Angular, React, they can actually be compiled down into a single HTML file with JavaScript file, and then they can actually be uploaded to S3 and deployed using Serverless Finch. And just like that, you can kind of have a live running site that you made in React or something like that. So that's a very common thing that people do. So yeah, that's awesome. So now that we have this stuff there, let's go ahead and follow the last command, which was to start creating these things. So the first one, it's going to make a directory, make two directories, one client, inside a client, a distribution. And then it's going to create two files, index.html and error.html inside of the client distribution. And then it's going to echo into those files so we actually have something to look at. So let's go ahead and add this. So we can go into the terminal, and we can run these commands. Cool, and it looks like we have that. So we can look inside a client distribution. We have an error.html and an index.html. So instead of doing that, let's actually use the HTML. If you're using Atom, and it kind of has this like autocomplete code, so you can actually do some cool stuff like this really fast. Error page. Let's do the HTML one too. Index.html, and we'll say index page, and add another h1. Call it index page. Cool. All right, so now we have two pages, error and index, and we are ready to go. Cool. So the last thing that we have to do is run this command, serverless client deploy. It does have these extra configuration options, which you can read about down below for handling different cases that you may need. So let's run serverless client deploy. Let's do a -v on the end of that. So it says the deployment will upload all files from the client distribution, so that's good. It will set serverless Finch plugin static site configuration, that's good. It will set the bucket policy, and it will also set the course policy, so cross-origin resource sharing policy. So yes, all of that looks good. Okay, so it's looking for the bucket, it does not exist. It's configuring the bucket, setting the resources, and it is uploaded. So your site is now available, and we can go to this right here, and we should be able to see, we switch over here to a new tab, we can see index page, and that's awesome. And if we do something like 1 2 3, we get error page. So that basically means that if someone goes to your site and they go to a page that doesn't exist, they see the error page. If they go to a page that does exist, they get index page. So that's super cool, and yeah, so that's awesome. So just right there, in just a couple minutes, we actually set up a live website, which you can actually run tests against, and you can use this for development, and you can use it for sample deployments and things like that. Like let's say you were working with a customer and you wanted to show him updates or show them updates. One way that you could do that is by just sending over this kind of static this URL. It'll actually pull up your website, and it'll be live, and they can go to it on their browser and see it. So that's great, and we got this set up. One more thing about this is we can also do serverless client remove. So basically, if you want to take down the website, you can use this command. So let's go ahead and run that. Are you sure you want to delete the bucket? Yes. So it's deleting all the bucket, or all the objects, and it's removing the bucket, and it is now removed. And so now, if we go back to that same page, we can see 404 not found, meaning that that bucket does not exist anymore, and our website is no longer live. So that's as easy as it takes to kind of tear it down after you've created it. Looking down this, you have other things like object headers, you have redirects, routing rules, for redirects. There's some command line parameters. So if you wanted to deploy but not delete the contents, because each time that you deploy it wipes the bucket. So if you didn't want to do that, you could just add this flag here, and it would no longer delete the stuff inside of the bucket when you're deploying. You can do no policy change, no confirm, and that's it. Yeah, so very simple, very easy. If you're a web developer and not very familiar with AWS or serverless, this is just something you could do in the matter of 10 minutes, just following like this tutorial, and you can immediately start playing around with the live website. Once you're that deep into it, it's no problem then adding, like we've seen in other videos, adding a resources section down here, and then adding DynamoDB and things like that. So you could have things like DynamoDB, you could have your Lambda functions, and then inside of your index.html, you could actually make HTTP, or inside of your JavaScript files, you could actually make HTTP requests to your Lambda functions that are exposed via API gateway. So in future videos, I'll cover CRUD functionality, like creating a REST API with Lambda, API gateway, and serverless. And you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about, is that now that you're using Serverless Finch to deploy your website, you can also use serverless to deploy the database, and you can also use it to deploy basically the API that goes along with it. So you can have a static website that's dynamic through API calls, and all of it defined kind of in one serverless file. And so that's just that's so rad that you can do that. And then you can just run a couple terminal commands, and you have the entire thing put together and ready to go. So this was Ryan Jones with Serverless Guru. I will see you next time. Thank you.